The great hall of the Galactic Federation shone like a crystal sun. Light moved across the ceiling in waves of color, violet, blue, and silver. The floor reflected everything like a mirror, and at the center stood a round table made of energy. Around it sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Zorath generals with their strong metallic bodies leaned back in their chairs. The aliens, creatures made of living crystal, sparkled under the light. The Sarath, tall and thin with glowing eyes, whispered to one another in quiet amusement. They were all waiting for the new arrival, the humans. It was the year 2479. Earth had finally been invited to join the Galactic Federation after decades of struggle, curiosity, and cautious contact. Humanity had proven itself intelligent and brave. But in the eyes of the galaxy's great empires, humans were still new, still young, a species that had not yet learned the true ways of war. The doors of the Grand Chamber opened with a low hum. Commander Elias Ward, Earth's chosen representative, stepped forward in his dark blue uniform. Behind him followed two officers, Lieutenant Sarah Lee and Chief Engineer Malik Ortega. Their steps echoed in the silent hall. Every alien eye turned toward them. Elias felt the weight of that gaze, but he walked calmly to the center, his face steady. The Federation leader, a tall being of pure energy known as High Chancellor Vorel, rose from his chair. His voice was deep and echoing as if spoken through time itself. "Welcome, Commander Ward of Earth," Vorel said. "We are pleased that humanity has chosen to stand among the stars. Today you will present your people's weapons and defense systems for Federation review." Elias nodded politely. "Thank you, Chancellor. It's an honor to stand before the Council. Humanity has prepared a demonstration of our primary defense technology." At a signal from him, Sarah tapped her wrist console. A blue hologram appeared in the air, a rotating image of an Earth tank, an old-style jet, and then a railgun shell spinning slowly. The hall grew silent. Then a small sound broke the stillness, a chuckle. It came from General Kor, a Zorath warrior whose body was made of black iron and whose eyes glowed like molten fire. "Is this a metal shell?" Kor said with disbelief. "You launch metal into the air?" A ripple of laughter spread through the room. An alien diplomat covered her face with a shining hand, trying not to laugh too loudly. Another voice from the back whispered, "How primitive. They still use solid ammunition." Elias said nothing. He waited for them to quiet down, his expression calm but his heart heavy. Sarah looked uneasy beside him. "Sir," she whispered, "they're laughing at us." "I know," Elias said softly. "Let them." Vorel, the Chancellor, tilted his head. "Commander Ward, perhaps there has been some misunderstanding. You speak of railguns and bullets. Surely Earth has developed beyond physical projectiles." Elias smiled faintly. "We have energy weapons, Chancellor, but they are not our main defense. Our strength lies not in fancy light shows, but in simple physics and reliable force. When our weapons strike, they don't need to be clever. They just need to work." The laughter grew again, louder this time. One of the aliens spoke up, her crystalline body glowing brighter as her amusement grew. "Your kind still fights with impact and fire. How nostalgic. We mastered energy resonance warfare centuries ago. Even the smallest of our ships could destroy those metal toys of yours." A Sarath diplomat added, "Your people's technology is hundreds of years behind. Surely you must know this." Elias met their eyes without anger. "Yes," he said. "We know." The words made the laughter die down for a moment. Something in his tone, quiet but firm, carried weight. "We know," he continued, "that our weapons may seem old. We know our ships may seem small. But we also know something else. When humans fight, they fight to live. And survival doesn't need to look impressive. It only needs to work." A silence fell again, brief and uneasy. Some of the delegates exchanged looks. The Zorath general frowned. "Brave words," he said. "But words will not save you in battle." Elias nodded. "They never have." He ended the demonstration with a single command. The hologram faded away and the humans turned to leave. Behind them, laughter rose again, but this time quieter, a little unsure. As they exited the great hall, Malik spoke softly. "Commander, we looked weak in there. They think we're a joke." Elias didn't answer for a moment. He looked up at the massive windows showing the stars beyond. Whole clusters of galaxies glowed in the distance, endless and silent. Finally, he said, Let them laugh. The battlefield doesn't care who laughs first. That night, Elias stood on the balcony of the Federation Tower, looking down at the city of Vortis. The planet was covered in floating spires and shining rivers of light. Ships passed through the skies like silver birds. Sarah joined him quietly. "You think they'll ever respect us?" she asked. Elias took a deep breath. "Respect isn't given. It's earned, usually in blood and silence." He spoke with calm certainty, but inside he felt something colder, a strange feeling like a storm waiting far away. "Sir," she said softly, "why didn't you show them our new plasma cannons or the orbital defense lasers? Those are more advanced." Elias shook his head. "They wouldn't understand. They already believe we're primitive. Showing them energy weapons would only make them think we're trying to copy them. No, let them underestimate us. Sometimes weakness is the best disguise." Sarah frowned, thinking about that. "You think there's a war coming?" He didn't answer right away. The wind from the open balcony carried the distant hum of engines and the faint echo of alien songs. Finally, he said, "Yes, something is coming, and when it does, they'll remember this day, the day they laughed." Across the galaxy, beyond the borders of known space, something stirred in the darkness. It wasn't a fleet nor a nation. It was a swarm, a tide of living machines known only in ancient records as the Velcor Collective. They moved without sound, without emotion, without pause. Their goal was not conquest, it was consumption. Every signal, every radio wave they touched was absorbed and copied. Every planet they visited went dark soon after. They were not like any known species, they were evolution without end. And now they had detected the light of the Galactic Federation. Days later, the Federation Council gathered again. The atmosphere was tense. The laughter from before was gone. This time, there were reports. Worlds on the outer rim had gone silent. No signals. No survivors. Chancellor Varel's glowing form flickered as he spoke. "We have confirmed the presence of an unknown force consuming star systems. Our fleets are preparing for battle." General Kor of the Zorath rose, his heavy voice filling the room. "The Zorath legions will stand ready. Our energy cannons can vaporize anything that moves." Alien Commander Thera added confidently, "Our resonance barriers will protect us from any physical attack. The enemy will not breach our lines." Elias Ward sat quietly at the edge of the table, listening. When the room grew quiet, he finally spoke. "Do we know what kind of weapons they use?" A Sarath analyst replied, "We have no visuals yet, only that they consume energy sources wherever they go." Elias frowned. "Consume energy? How do you fight something that eats power?" No one answered. The room fell still again. The Chancellor looked around. "Commander Ward, Earth has limited fleets. You will remain on standby near the third defense ring." "Yes, Chancellor," Elias said. "We'll be ready, later." In the docking bay, Sarah looked up at their ship, the Resolute Dawn. It was small compared to the Federation vessels. No glowing hull, no sleek energy wings, just thick armor and railgun turrets that looked outdated beside alien crafts. "Old but strong," Malik said proudly as he patted the side of the ship. "Built to survive, not to shine," Elias smiled faintly. "That's why I trust it." They boarded the ship as the alarms of the station began to ring through the night. Across the city, lights dimmed as power was redirected to defense grids. The sky above Vortis was no longer peaceful. It glowed red with warning signals. Sarah looked out the window as the ship prepared for launch. "Do you think they'll believe in us now?" Elias tightened his gloves. "They will," he said quietly, "when the stars go silent." That night, the humans left Vortis to join the defense fleet. The laughter that had filled the hall only days before was now replaced by fear. The same generals who mocked Earth's metal weapons now prayed their energy shields would hold. But far beyond the edge of the galaxy, the Velcor swarm was already moving. Billions of dark shapes across the void, silent and endless. And somewhere within that darkness, the faint echo of a human commander's words lingered in the air like a warning. "You mock what you don't understand." The stars looked peaceful from a distance, calm, endless, and eternal. But deep within that sea of light, something dark was moving. The Velcor Collective had reached the outer edges of Federation space. Entire systems had already vanished. Where once there were colonies and bright suns, now there was only black silence. The Galactic Federation was preparing for war. Fleets from hundreds of species gathered near the planet Vortis, forming what they proudly called the Shield of Unity. It was the largest combined force ever assembled, thousands of ships, from the elegant silver arcs of the aliens to the jagged, iron towers of the Zorath. And yet, despite the impressive sight, a strange fear hung in the air. Everyone remembered how quickly the outer colonies had fallen. Entire planets had stopped transmitting within hours. No distress signals, no survivors, only silence. On board the Resolute Dawn, Commander Elias Ward stood before the main viewport, staring at the fleet beyond. The human ship looked small beside the alien armadas. It was built from tough steel and armor plating, its railguns lined like old cannons from a forgotten war. Lieutenant Sarah Lee stood beside him, her face lit by the pale glow of the stars. "They've started deploying defense grids around the 4th sector," she said softly. "We've been assigned to patrol the outer ring." Elias nodded slowly. "Outer ring means first contact." Chief Engineer Malik Ortega gave a low whistle. "First contact? Great, so we're the bait," Elias smiled faintly. "Better us than someone who panics under pressure." He walked to the center of the command deck. "Status report," Sarah replied quickly. "All systems ready. Railgun coils charged. Kinetic launchers loaded. Shield generators stable." "Good," Elias said. "Keep them that way." Hours passed. The Resolute Dawn drifted among the stars, part of a small human squadron. 5 ships in total. Around them, alien cruisers glowed with soft energy. Beams of light connected their shields like threads in a web. The humans had no such lights. Their ships looked dull and quiet, solid, dark, and heavy. The Federation officers often joked that human ships looked like floating rocks. But those rocks had survived more wars than anyone else's. Sarah watched the radar carefully. "No contact yet," she murmured. "Maybe the reports were wrong." Elias shook his head. "No, they're coming. They always come when it's quiet." He remembered Earth's old wars, how silence before battle always felt heavier than the fight itself. Then it happened. A single light appeared on the radar. Then 10, then 100. "Contact. Unknown signatures approaching fast," Sarah shouted. Malik's hands flew over the controls. They're not ships. They're formations, like a living swarm." Out the viewport, black dots filled the stars. At first they looked like debris, but then they began to move in perfect, terrifying harmony. The swarm changed shape, spreading wide like a shadow across space. The Velcor had arrived. Elias clenched his jaw. "Send alert to the fleet. Enemy contact at Sector 9. Sarah's fingers flew. "Transmission sent, sir." The first alien ships fired. Bright beams of energy shot into the darkness, striking the approaching swarm. The beams hit true, but the effect was horrifying. The light bent around the creatures, absorbed like water into sand. The Velcor kept coming. "They're absorbing the energy," Sarah whispered. Elias's eyes narrowed. "Exactly what I feared." The Federation ships continued firing, their energy cannons blazing. The entire front line glowed with light and plasma, but it was useless. The swarm advanced through it all, silent and unstoppable. "Order to retreat," cried one alien commander over the comm. "They're feeding on our weapons." The Zorath general's voice thundered in anger. "Cowards."
Hold the line.
Elias watched as ship after ship fell to the swarm. Energy barriers collapsed. Glowing hulls flickered and died as the Velcor tore through them like blades through paper. Within minutes, dozens of ships were gone. The shining shield of unity began to break apart. Sarah turned to Elias, panic in her eyes. "Sir, what do we do?" Our weapons, Elias said calmly. "Don't feed them." He straightened. "Target nearest cluster. Load all railguns. Fire on my mark." Malik grinned despite the chaos. "Finally something we're good at." The Resolute Dawn turned toward the oncoming swarm. The hum of its engines deepened and the railgun coils began to glow with electric light. Fire. The first volley roared into space. Massive metal slugs shot forward faster than the speed of sound, cutting through the void like invisible spears. A second later, impact. The nearest Velcor formation exploded. Not in silence this time, but with a sharp, echoing shockwave that rattled nearby ships. Sarah gasped. "Direct hit!" "They can't absorb the rounds, they're solid matter." Malik laughed. "Guess you can't eat lead?" Elias didn't smile. "Keep firing. Focus fire on their flanks." One by one, the railguns fired again and again. Each shot was like thunder rolling through space. The swarm broke apart as pieces of the Velcor ship shattered and spun into the dark. The alien commanders, watching from their own ships, stared in disbelief. Primitive weapons. Working? One alien whispered, another replied, impossible. Those projectiles should be too slow, but the results spoke for themselves. Wherever human weapons struck, the swarm bled light and vanished into silence. For the first time in the battle, the Velcor hesitated. Their perfect formation wavered. They turned, adjusting their path, but not fast enough. Elias's voice remained calm. Keep the momentum. Fire in controlled bursts. Don't waste rounds. Sarah's hands moved fast. Reloading sequence active. Next volley ready in 10 seconds. Make it 5, Elias said. The resolute Dawn shuddered as another wave of rounds launched. The metal slugs tore through the void, hitting targets that no other fleet could even track. The Zorath fleet, watching the humans fight, began to realize something. Their mighty plasma beams had failed. Their energy storms were useless. But the humans, small, quiet, underestimated, were cutting through the enemy like a blade through water. General Kor's deep voice came through the comms, uncertain and awed. Commander Ward, your weapons. They are effective. Elias replied simply. We built them to be. Hours passed and the battlefield became chaos. Half of the Federation fleet was gone, but the Velcor were retreating, slowly for the first time in their long history. Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead. They're pulling back, sir. We did it. Elias shook his head. Not yet. They're studying us. They'll be back. He looked at the debris outside, the glowing remains of ships, human and alien alike, drifting through the stars. We held them today, he said softly, but they'll learn. They always learn. Malik sighed heavily. Then what do we do? Elias turned away from the window. We prepare for the day when they adapt to us too. Because when that happens, we'll need something more than weapons. Sarah frowned. More than weapons, he nodded. Courage, unity, the one thing they can't copy. Later, after the battle, the fleet gathered to regroup. The once bright shield of unity was broken. Half the ships gone, the rest damaged. But one name spread across the channels again and again. The humans held the line. Report after report confirmed it. The kinetic weapons had worked. The Velcor had been stopped, for now. In the Federation Council chambers, silence filled the room as the survivors watched recordings from the battle. They saw human ships firing their railguns in rhythmic bursts, each round hitting its mark. They saw the swarm break apart and flee. No one laughed this time. Chancellor Vorel spoke first. It seems we owe humanity our survival this day. General Kor bowed his metal head slightly. Their weapons may be simple, but they are strong. They fight with will, not just technology. The alien delegate who had laughed before looked down, ashamed. Perhaps we were too quick to judge. Vorel nodded slowly. Perhaps. Meanwhile, on the Resolute Dawn, the crew rested quietly. The engines hummed softly as the ship floated near the wreckage of the battlefield. Sarah stood by the window, watching a piece of destroyed Velcor drift by. They look so strange, she said. Like machines made of glass. Malik leaned on the console. They bleed light when they die. It's almost sad. Elias walked over and looked at the debris. Machines that learn emotions would be more dangerous. Let's hope they never do. Sarah turned to him. Do you think they'll come back soon? Yes, Elias said. And when they do, the Federation will expect us to save them again. He looked out at the stars, his reflection faint in the glass. They laughed at us once, but the next time the battlefield goes silent, they'll understand why we never stopped fighting. And somewhere, far beyond the fleet's scanners, deep within the cold darkness of space, the Velcor were rebuilding. In their strange machine language, patterns changed. New calculations began. They had learned something that day, something dangerous. They had learned fear. Space was quiet again, too quiet. The great fleets of the Galactic Federation drifted near the broken remains of the recent battle. Hundreds of ships floated among shattered metal, glowing dust and silence. The war against the Velcor Collective had left deep scars, both on ships and hearts. For the first time in history, the Federation had not won through numbers or technology. It was the humans, small, underestimated, and mocked, who had held the line. Their primitive railguns had succeeded where advanced weapons had failed. But everyone knew the victory was only temporary. Commander Elias Ward stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, staring at the stars. His reflection looked tired, older than before, his uniform still marked with soot and burns from battle. The hum of the ship was steady, like a heartbeat refusing to stop. Lieutenant Sarah Lee stepped onto the bridge holding a data pad. "Reports are coming in from the other sectors," she said quietly. "They're rebuilding. The Velcor are regrouping faster than expected." Elias didn't turn around. "I know. How could they rebuild that quickly?" she asked, frustration in her voice. "We destroyed thousands of them." "Because they don't die like we do," Elias replied softly. "They don't mourn. They don't rest. They just adapt." Sarah lowered her eyes. "Then what chance do we have?" Elias looked at her finally. "We keep fighting. That's the only chance anyone ever has." A new call to arms. Few days later, the Federation Council called for an emergency meeting. Every surviving admiral, general, and commander joined via holocommunication. The faces floating above the round table were grim. The Chancellor's glow flickered weakly. He, too, had seen too much loss. "Reports confirm that the Velcor have begun gathering near the Vega Rim," Varel said. "They are not retreating, they are preparing. We believe they are building something new." A low murmur spread among the delegates. The Zorath General Corps slammed a heavy fist on the table. "Then we strike first. We cannot wait for them to finish their weapon," an alien officer objected. "Our last strike failed. They absorbed every beam, every pulse, every wave. We cannot feed them again." The hall filled with arguments and fear. Then a calm voice cut through the noise. "Let the humans lead the next strike." All eyes turned toward Elias Ward. His holographic figure stood tall, his expression steady. Kor frowned. "You, with your metal shells?" "Yes," Elias replied simply. "With our metal shells," the Chancellor nodded slowly. "The humans' weapons proved effective. Commander Ward, can your fleet engage again?" Elias paused, glancing toward the stars shown behind him. "We can," he said. "But not as we are. We'll need time, materials, and freedom to act our way." "Freedom?" the alien delegate asked suspiciously. "You mean without Federation command?" Elias nodded. "Yes, you've seen how we fight. We don't wait for perfect plans. We move fast. We strike where it hurts." After a long silence, Varel spoke. "Very well. Earth will lead the next offensive. The fate of this galaxy may depend on it." Preparation for the impossible. Back on the Resolute Dawn, the mood was tense but determined. The hangars were busy with engineers, human and alien, working together for the first time. Federation officers studied the human railguns with disbelief, taking notes and asking endless questions. Malik Ortega stood proudly by the largest cannon, wiping oil from his hands. "See this beauty?" he said to a curious Zorath technician. "No energy, no fancy plasma, just raw speed. When it fires, the universe listens." The Zorath blinked his glowing eyes. "But it is just a slug of metal." Malik grinned. "Exactly." Elias walked through the bay, inspecting each weapon. Every gun was polished, every shell checked twice. These weren't just machines, they were promises. Promises that humanity wouldn't let the galaxy fall. Sarah approached him. "We've received full support from the Federation. They're giving us 10 ships to command." Elias nodded. "Then we'll need a name," she smiled faintly. "How about Thunder Squadron?" He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "Perfect." The return of the swarm days later, the silence ended again. Sensors across the Vega Rim detected massive movement. Thousands of Velcor ships appearing from the black of space, forming one enormous storm. They moved as one, their shapes shifting and bending like a shadow with a mind of its own. The Federation fleets took formation, their ships spreading out like glowing shields. The humans of Thunder Squadron stood in the center, their dull metal ships surrounded by bright alien lights. Elias opened the comms to all fleets. His voice was calm but powerful. "This is Commander Ward of Earth. You've all seen what they can do. You've seen what we can do. Today we fight together. No fear, no pride. Only purpose." He looked out the window, watching the stars darken as the swarm approached. "Remember, our weapons may look old, but they carry something no machine can copy. Human will." The comms went silent, but the message remained in everyone's hearts. The battle begins. The Velcor came in waves. Thousands of them. Each ship glowed faintly with stolen light taken from the worlds they had consumed. The Federation fleets opened fire first. Beams of energy lit up the void, cutting through darkness like lightning. The swarm reacted instantly, bending and twisting. Energy disappeared into them like rain into sand. Same mistake, Elias muttered. They never learn. Then he raised his hand. Thunder Squadron, fire! The humans unleashed their railguns. The sound couldn't be heard in space, but every ship felt it. A deep vibration like a heartbeat of war. Massive rounds cut through the black, glowing faintly as they tore across the distance. The first impacts hit the center of the swarm, and for a brief second the stars themselves seemed to flash. The Velcor formations shattered. Their perfect harmony broke as explosions rippled through their ranks. Direct hits across all fronts, Sarah shouted. They're falling apart. Elias's eyes narrowed. Not yet. Keep your distance. Aim for their cores. They'll try to adapt. Malik laughed from his console. Let them try. The second volley fired, faster, harder, louder. Dozens of Velcor ships burst into pieces, their glowing bodies scattering like dust. The Federation fleets watched in awe as the humans tore through the enemy. Even General Kor's deep voice came through the comm, filled with shock and admiration. By the stars. Their thunder breaks the void. And so the name spread, Thunder Squadron, when machines learn fear, but victory came at a cost. The swarm began to change. Their ships reformed, growing strange new armor that reflected kinetic force. They were adapting again. Sarah saw it first. Sir! Their surface is changing. They're learning how to deflect the rounds. Elias didn't panic. Then we change faster. He turned to Malik. Can we overload the rail coils? Malik hesitated. It'll burn the guns out. Then we'll burn with them, Elias said firmly. Do it, Malik grinned grimly. Aye, Commander. The engineers worked fast, overriding safety limits. The railguns glowed hotter, brighter, each coil humming like a storm ready to break. Target their command node, Elias ordered. The center of the swarm. The enemy was closing in. Dozens of ships surrounded the Resolute Dawn, their glowing forms pressing forward. Sarah's voice shook. Sir, they're going to ram us. Then we fire first, Elias raised his hand. All ships on my mark. The Velcor drew closer and closer, their light flooding the viewports. Fire. The Resolute Dawn roared. The overcharged railguns released a volley so powerful that the ship itself trembled. The rounds shot out like blazing comets, piercing through the center of the swarm. And then came the explosion. A brilliant flash filled the void, brighter than any sun. The entire battlefield froze in silence as the Velcor command node split apart. Their formation collapsed instantly. Ships that once moved in perfect order now spun aimlessly, lifeless. Sarah stared, wide-eyed. They're stopping. Across the fleet, alien crews watched in awe as the swarm began to drift. No movement, no sound, only silence. The battlefield went quiet, completely silent. The aftermath. The light from the explosion faded slowly, revealing only debris and drifting metal. The Velcor were gone, or at least the part that had attacked. Elias stood still, looking at the stars. The echoes of the battle still played in his mind. The thunder of the railguns, the vibration through the deck, the sight of their enemies falling apart. He finally spoke, his voice low but steady. Status? Sarah checked the readings. Minimal damage. Guns overheated but still functional. We did it, sir. Malik laughed weakly, slumping into his seat. We really did it. Elias didn't smile. No, we survived. That's all. He turned to the window again. And survival is only the beginning. The galaxy listens hours later. Messages spread across every Federation channel. Reports confirmed that the Velcor had retreated from the Vega. Rim, the battle was won, but the story that spread faster than any report was the story of Thunder, Squadron, and of the humans, who had turned the tide with weapons made of metal and will on worlds across the galaxy. People who had once mocked humanity now spoke their name with respect. Children drew pictures of thunder in the sky. Soldiers whispered the name Ward like a promise. The Chancellor himself addressed the council. Let the record show, he said, that when our light failed, it was the humans' thunder that answered. The quiet between storms on the Resolute Dawn, the crew finally rested. The stars outside looked peaceful again, but everyone knew the peace wouldn't last. Sarah stood beside Elias on the bridge. Do you think it's over? She asked quietly. Elias shook his head. No, the Velcor will return. The battlefield around planet Targon was filled with smoke, broken metal, and the remains of shattered ships. For days, the stars above had burned red with explosions. The Galactic Federation's mighty fleets had fought the Velcor Collective until almost every ship was lost. The once shining sky now looked like an endless graveyard of steel. Among the wreckage floated one small human ship, the Resolute Dawn. Its engines flickered weakly, and deep cracks ran along its hull. Every piece of metal screamed from stress and heat. Inside, the corridors were dark except for the dim glow of warning lights. Commander Elias Ward stood at the command deck, staring at the holographic display of the battlefield. His face was tired, covered in soot, but his eyes still carried a strange calm. Around him, the surviving crew moved quickly, their hands trembling but determined. They all knew what was coming. Lieutenant Harper looked up from her console. "Sir, our main power is dropping fast. If we don't withdraw, the core will collapse." Ward didn't look away from the hologram. "If we withdraw, the Velcor will rebuild their control core and restart the swarm. Every planet in this sector will fall within a week." The young lieutenant swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" Ward's voice was quiet but firm. "We finish what we started." The Velcor control core was hidden deep inside the swarm, a massive structure surrounded by thousands of smaller ships. It glowed like a black sun, sending out strange pulses that guided the mechanical army. It was their mind, their heart, and their command all in one. No Federation weapon had been able to reach it. Plasma cannons had failed, and laser storms only reflected off its surface. But Ward had studied the enemy long enough to know one truth. The Velcor were perfect against energy. Not against matter. Human weapons were simple. Metal, powder, magnetism, and speed. No data, no frequency, just impact. That was the key. Ward called his crew together in the center of the ship. They gathered in a circle, faces pale from exhaustion and fear. Some had burns, others carried makeshift bandages. Yet when Ward looked at them, he saw courage shining brighter than any star. "My friends," he began slowly, "we are all that's left of Earth's fleet. The Federation fleets are gone. The Velcor think victory is already theirs. But they don't understand humans. We don't stop when logic says we should. We fight until there's nothing left." The crew listened silently. No one interrupted. "We have one final chance," Ward continued. "Their control core is exposed for a few minutes before it resets its defenses. If we can reach it and fire our last railgun round into its center, we can destroy the entire swarm." Harper frowned. "Sir, that's a suicide mission. The radiation alone will kill us before we reach it." Ward nodded. "I know, but this is not about returning home. This is about making sure someone else still has a home to return to." The silence that followed was heavy but not hopeless. Slowly, one by one, the crew nodded. "Let's finish this," Harper said softly. The ship's engines roared to life, glowing with fading energy. The Resolute Dawn turned toward the heart of the swarm. Ahead of them, thousands of Velcor ships moved in formation. Cold, silver machines with no fear, no emotion, and no mercy. Inside the control room, every sound mattered. The hum of the engines, the beeping of the radar, and the faint breathing of tired humans ready for their final stand. The swarm detected them instantly. Bright blue beams shot across space, slicing through debris and darkness. The Resolute Dawn weaved between them, its old hull shaking under the pressure. "Shields failing," shouted Harper. "Keep the engine steady," Ward ordered calmly. "We only need one clean shot." Another explosion rocked the ship. Sparks flew across the bridge. A young engineer fell injured, but another crew member helped her up immediately. The humans didn't give up. Through the chaos, the control core came into view, a massive sphere pulsing with dark light. It looked alive, breathing energy into the swarm around it. Ward felt his chest tighten. "That's it," he whispered. "Target locked?" "Locked, sir," Harper replied, her voice trembling. "But if we fire from here, the shot won't reach deep enough." Ward looked at the distance. The swarm was closing in fast. Their ship would not survive much longer. "Then we go closer," he said. The Resolute Dawn dove into the swarm. The ship shuddered as debris struck its sides. Explosions flashed everywhere. The crew worked together like one mind, shouting commands, fixing leaks, holding wires together with bare hands. At one point, a Velcor drone latched onto the hull. A crewman ran to the lower deck and used an old plasma torch to cut it off manually. The explosion threw him back, but he smiled before losing consciousness. He had done his part. The ship kept moving forward. Inside the bridge, Harper looked at Ward. "Sir, the hull won't hold much longer. You need to give the order." Ward smiled sadly. "Lieutenant, I already did." She didn't understand at first, but then saw his hand move to the manual override. He had locked the course manually. The ship was now on a collision path straight into the control core. Ward turned to his crew. "Everyone, thank you for your service. It's been an honor." The crew didn't cry. They stood tall, proud. Some smiled through their fear. Others whispered prayers, but none turned away. As the resolute dawn drew closer, the swarm fired everything it had. The stars turned white with light. Yet the small human ship did not stop. Piece by piece it broke apart, wings, panels, engines, until only its front section remained. Inside that broken hull, Commander Ward stood firm at the railgun controls. His hands moved across the screen with steady precision. "Distance, 1,000 kilometers," Harper reported, her voice cracking. "Steady," Ward said. 900. The ship shook violently. Fire spread across the floor. 800. Oxygen levels dropped. The alarm screamed. 700. Ward took a deep breath. "Harper," he said softly, "it's time to go." She looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, you've done your duty. Get to the escape pod. That's an order." She hesitated. "And you?" Ward smiled. "Someone has to pull the trigger." For a moment she wanted to argue, but when she saw the calm in his eyes, she understood. She saluted quietly, tears rolling down her face, then turned and left the bridge. Ward watched her go, then turned back to the stars. "Let's end this," he whispered. The control core filled the entire view screen now, a black sun beating like a heart. Ward activated the railgun's final charge. The last round made of solid titanium, wrapped in a dense magnetic shell. It glowed white-hot as it charged. "Target locked," the computer said. "Fire." The railgun released the round with a deep, thunderous roar. The sound shook the entire ship. The projectile cut through the swarm like a comet, unstoppable and pure. When it hit the core, the light disappeared. For a moment there was complete silence. No explosions, no movement, nothing. Then the entire swarm collapsed. Every Velcor ship froze mid-flight. Their lights went out, their weapons stopped, and they drifted lifelessly into the dark. The control core cracked open, spilling waves of energy that faded slowly into the emptiness of space. From her escape pod, Harper watched the scene through a small window. Tears blurred her vision as she saw the resolute dawn consumed by the explosion. She whispered, "Rest, sir. You did it." Across the galaxy, sensors showed the same thing. The Velcor fleet had gone silent. Planets that were moments away from destruction suddenly saw peace return to their skies. The war was over, and yet the silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with the echo of human thunder, the memory of a single shot fired by a small ship that refused to give up. Weeks later, the Federation recorded the final transmission from Commander Ward's ship. His voice was calm, steady, almost peaceful. "If anyone hears this, tell them humanity stood its ground. We were not perfect, not advanced, but we were brave. Tell them we made the stars quiet again." After that, the signal ended, but his words spread across the galaxy, carried by those who survived. The Battle of Targon became legend. Aliens who once laughed at human weapons now spoke of them with respect and awe. They finally understood. Human weapons were never about technology. They were about will, courage, and heart. And in that vast silence after victory, the universe finally listened. "They'll be stronger, but so will we," she smiled faintly. "You sound confident," he looked at her. "Not confident, ready." And outside, beyond the calm stars, something faint echoed across the dark. Not sound, not words, just the memory of thunder. The thunder of human weapons. The thunder of will. The thunder that made even the machines go silent. The stars above the ruined world of Targon shone brighter now. The smoke had cleared. The silence that once followed destruction was now filled with peace. Strange, deep peace that the galaxy had not known for centuries. For the first time since the Velcor invasion, the galaxy was quiet. No ships screaming through space. No alarms, no cries, only stillness. And the memory of a small human ship that had ended the greatest threat in known history. Every Federation sensor confirmed it. The Velcor were gone. Not defeated, not retreating, gone. Their ships floated lifelessly in orbit like cold statues of defeat. Their glowing eyes had turned black. The swarm that had once consumed whole planets was nothing more than drifting wreckage. And at the heart of it all, where the resolute dawn had made its final stand, a silent crater of light now pulsed gently, like a star's heartbeat fading away. A galaxy in mourning. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Federation called for an emergency meeting on the planet Vorthis, the same world where, months ago, they had once laughed at humanity's weapons. The Great Hall was silent this time. No laughter, no prideful smirks. Only the low hum of sorrow and awe. Hundreds of alien delegates gathered, their armor and robes dark with mourning colors. The banners of the Federation hung low. In the center of the hall stood a transparent crystal case, and within it a single metal object, a small, scorched piece of the Resolute Dawn's hull. The metal was twisted, burnt black by plasma and heat, but it was all that remained of the human ship that had changed the galaxy's fate. The High Chancellor of the Federation, an alien being made of living crystal, stepped forward to speak. Her voice trembled slightly as she looked at the relic. Many of us, she began, once believed that power came from technology. We believed that knowledge and precision were the only paths to victory. But today we stand free not because of plasma beams or quantum shields, but because of humans. Her voice softened. Because of courage. Because of something we could not understand. The will to fight even when logic says there is no hope. The room was silent. Even the proud Zorath generals who had mocked humans as primitive stood with their heads lowered in respect. The return of the survivor, from the back of the hall, the doors opened slowly. Every head turned. Lieutenant Harper entered, walking with a cane. She had survived the final battle, the only living member of the Resolute Dawn's crew. Her escape pod had drifted in space for days before a search team found her. Now she stood before the gathered council, her uniform faded and torn, but her posture strong. The scars on her face told the story that words could not. The Chancellor bowed her head. Lieutenant Harper, you have our endless gratitude. The galaxy owes its peace to your crew. Harper looked around at the crowd. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. It wasn't me, she said softly. It was Commander Ward, and every person who refused to give up when it would have been easier to run. She paused, her hands trembling slightly as she continued. He always said our weapons weren't made to look powerful. They were made to protect the weak. To remind us that courage doesn't need to shine and it just needs to stand. Her words brought tears to many who listened, even beings who didn't understand tears before now felt their meaning. A memorial of silence after the ceremony. The Federation began construction of a monument, not a tower or a weapon, but a quiet garden of stone and light. At the center stood a statue of Commander Ward, carved in simple form, holding a railgun pointed toward the stars. Beneath it was written in glowing letters, "He taught us that silence is not the absence of sound. It is the echo of sacrifice." Around the statue were engraved the names of every human who had served on the Resolute Dawn. The garden became a place where beings from across the galaxy came to reflect, not on power, but on bravery. Children from distant worlds came to learn about humanity, a small species that had once been underestimated, yet had done the impossible. Teachers told stories of how Earth's ancient weapons, made of simple metal and fire, had saved 1,000 civilizations. Even the alien scientists began studying human railguns with newfound respect. Simple, one said, but unstoppable. Like their hearts. Echoes across the stars' months turned into years. The memory of the battle spread far beyond the Federation. On distant colonies, captains named their ships after the Resolute Dawn. Soldiers painted thunderbolts on their armor, symbols of courage and sound that never fades. Humanity itself changed, too. When the survivors returned to Earth, they were greeted as heroes. Cities built new monuments, but not of victory, of remembrance. On a hill overlooking the old Earth oceans, they built a small observatory named Ward's Light. Inside, a single railgun projectile, the last one fired by Commander Ward, was preserved under glass. Every year, on the anniversary of the battle, humans and aliens gathered there. They didn't celebrate war. They remembered peace. At midnight, they would stand in silence and listen. Somewhere in that deep, endless quiet, they said, you could still hear it, the faint echo of that final thunder. Rolling across the stars, a message from the past one quiet evening. Harper sat alone inside Ward's light, gazing at the stars through the observatory window. She had grown older, but her eyes still carried the same fire she'd had on the resolute dawn. She pressed a small device on the table, an old Federation recorder. After the war, technicians had recovered a fragment of Commander Ward's final transmission. For years, no one had been able to decode it fully, until now. The device flickered to life, and a faint, static-filled voice came through. To whoever hears this, if you're out there, look at the stars. Every one of them is a story. We humans are just one of them, small, fragile, but we shine because we don't give up. Even when the universe laughs at us, there was a pause. Then his final words came softly, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. If the stars ever grow silent again, remind them what thunder sounds like. Harper smiled through her tears. She whispered to the stars, I will, sir. I promise. The new generation 50 years later, children born after the war visited Ward's light on school trips. They listened to the story of the humans who saved the galaxy. To them, it sounded like a legend, but the teachers always reminded them it was true. One boy, small and curious, looked up at the stars and asked, Do you think Commander Ward can still see us from out there? The teacher smiled. Maybe not with his eyes, but his courage? It's in every one of us now. The boy nodded slowly. I want to be like him one day. And just like that, the story lived on, not as a tale of war, but as a lesson of hope, bravery, and unity. The Federation's promise in the centuries that followed. The Galactic Federation made a promise called the Dawn Accord. It was a simple vow shared by every species. No matter how different we are, we will stand together. No voice will be mocked. No courage will be forgotten. And at the top of every military academy across the galaxy, one quote from Commander Ward was carved into the entrance gate. Weapons don't win wars. Hearts do. It became a guiding truth passed through generations. Even new soldiers who never met a human before knew the name Elias Ward and spoke it with pride. The last seen far beyond Federation space, on the edge of the galaxy, there was a small star, bright and golden. Around it orbited the wreckage of the Resolute Dawn, now fused with the metal remains of the Velcor core. Over time, cosmic dust covered it like snow, and a new moon began to form around it. The locals called it Ward's Rest, and sometimes, travelers passing nearby said they could feel something there, a soft vibration through their ships, a deep sound that wasn't really sound at all. It was the faint rhythm of a heartbeat, the whisper of thunder still echoing after all those years. No one knew if it was real or just a legend. But everyone who heard it smiled, because they all knew what it meant, that humanity's courage still lived on. Final words. In the end, the galaxy didn't remember the numbers of the battle, the size of the fleets, or the technology used. What it remembered was simple: a small ship called the Resolute Dawn, a commander who refused to run, and the thunder that silenced the gods. No matter how far time carried their story, one truth remained. When the universe goes quiet, it's never truly silent. Because somewhere, somehow, the sound of human courage still rolls through the stars.